What's up, self-healers? Lisa Lightfeather here. Welcome to my channel, Closing the Gap. We make a conscious effort to meet you where you're at on your healing and spiritual journey. For those of you who know me or may not know me, I also study astrology and astronomy, and right now the planets are just haywire, so it's been really difficult getting this video out today. For the last couple of days, actually. With Mars opposing Saturn in the third house, which is the house of communication. So communication has been quite difficult. But I'll do my best if I can get through this one. Today I want to come on and speak about a pretty tough topic, which is referred to as the malignant narcissist. Well, the malignant narcissist is a combination of antisocial personality disorder and narcissism. The term antisocial personality disorder is just an updated term for psychopath. And so this is basically just a psychopathic narcissist, right? Well, what happens when this is in the form of a mother? So I can only go based off of my experiences. So this is what I'm going to share with you today. So when a psychopathic mother or a malignant narcissistic mother conceives, there is no attachment to that conception, none whatsoever. Now, sometimes this is done, via just irresponsibility, an accident, or it's done on purpose. With my mother's life, it was typically done on purpose because she would come into contact with some man that she wanted to keep, right? And so she would get pregnant by them on purpose. And so when that man would leave, then she would despise the child. So it'd be the child's fault that the man did not stay versus it being any responsibility of hers, right? And so the child typically suffered. So we know with narcissism, there is a lack of empathy, triangulation, gaslighting, private life abuse versus public life facade, right? But then you add psychopath in there. So again, they have no regard for life. They have no regard for emotion. They have no regard for the child's feelings, for anyone's feelings for that much. But we're speaking about the mother, the malignant narcissistic mother. They have no regards for the child's feelings. They don't even, the children are not even, they're just like furniture there in the house, furniture that's in the way most of the time. So the malignant narcissistic mother is very abusive, right? And her children are basically in her way. They're in her way, and everything that goes on within her life, she blames the children, right? And so she's very vindictive towards the children. She has a very vindictive nature. And so she hurts the children through verbal abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse, even sexual abuse. The malignant narcissistic mother is the type of mother who sleeps with her sons and sells her daughters. They are so distraught in their dysfunction that they look at their children as a way of somehow making money off of them or using them to come up off with the system. But so if the child is not bringing them any type of income in any way, whether that be government assistance or she's like selling them to men or her daughters to men or something like that, if the children aren't making her money in some type of way or bringing something to the table, then they are no good to her. The malignant narcissistic mother even has the capacity to unalive her own children. My mother had 6 children. She had 4 girls and 2 boys. And for some reason, I guess because she was constantly rejected by men because she was basically toxic, and she was a drug addict, and she was every other thing you could think of. And so she was constantly rejected by men, and so she didn't like her sons, so she immediately got rid of her sons. Well, she told us that she had gotten rid of her sons. Later on in life, after she transitioned, we found that my brothers had actually been, at least one of them, had actually been unalived by her. Yeah? So this type of mother literally has zero emotion for her children, and her children are in extreme danger. So she can't use them for something, she's abusing them. Even if she can use them for something, she's abusing them verbally, mentally, physically, sexually, psychologically. The malignant narcissistic mother does not have enough emotion towards her children to know that they need the basic necessities of life, like food, shelter, clothing, hygienic, water, electricity. We would come home and the water would be off, electricity would be off. Even if the water was on and we tried to do something such as take a bath or brush our teeth or something, we would get beat or abused for using too much water, for running up the light bill or running up the water bill or whatever. So you weren't allowed to be clean. You weren't allowed to eat. Like, she received tons of money from the government for food assistance, right? She had 3 children. We never had food in the house. Her, as a malignant narcissist, right? They always want to escape themselves because they don't have the capacity to feel. They don't have the capacity for emotion. They see people as objects. They see people as objects to be used. And this includes their children. Their children are not exempt from this. As a matter of fact, their children are the primary source of their hatred for themselves and their anger for themselves. And so they're only concerned with their needs, whatever that is, whether it's drugs, sex, whatever that malignant narcissist needs, that's the only thing they're concerned with. So these children are deprived. They're deprived of food and shelter and clothing. They're deprived of health care. I remember that I would catch pneumonia almost every year of my childhood life. I would catch pneumonia and be on the brink of literal unaliving, barely able to breathe. I remember my chest hurting really, really bad. And she would finally take me to the hospital when I was practically not even breathing, right? And then she would go there and she would get the medications for whatever medications they gave for pneumonia at the time. It was some type of syrup or something. And she would take that syrup and she would put that in her soda that she was drinking. Anything to get her, for her to get high. That's the way she would function. And so later on, after my mother had transitioned, we found out that of course, we knew we had 2 brothers and a sister outside of the 3 of us girls that were left there at the house. But we never really knew what happened to them. She said that they passed away and that one was given away and so forth and so on. Well, later on, after she passed away and they were gathering all the children together to split the little $20 worth of stuff that she had left, we found that my little brother had been unalived at the hands of her. That he had, at the time that he was unalived, that he had pneumonia, but he was unalived by a head injury and a spleen injury. Meaning that she had literally, the baby was sick with pneumonia and the baby was probably crying and she had literally abused the child until it was unalived probably because he wouldn't stop crying. Whenever we cried as children, we were punished for it. And so you learned really quick not to show any emotion, right? She would eat in front of us, but we weren't allowed to have any food. I remember us literally going through trash cans looking for food. She would bring men home constantly, just drag any man home that would come home with her. And then she would get high and she'd be passed out asleep. And then these men would have their way with her. And when they were finished with her, they would come have their way with us in some kind of way. Or they would come back later because they saw that it was 1 woman and 3 children there. That the woman that was there to protect us was, incapacitated in some way. They'd come back later and they would come for my big sister or, one of us. And so it was a very terrifying childhood. A malignant narcissistic mother it's like being in a living hell on earth because you are not protected in any way. They expose you to extreme danger and they're not protective of you in any way. And 9 times out of 10 likely to blame the children for the way that the life is unfolding. So they're very vindictive parents, lack empathy, and they hate the fact that they've had children. The reason they keep having children is because they're hoping that one of these children are going to trap the man that they desire to have, whatever man that is at the time. And when that doesn't happen, the malignant narcissistic mother hates the child for it and actually verbally blames the child for the fact that they don't have the life that they desire. So what happens? What are the long-term effects of the children when you're raised by a psychopathic mother like this, right? And so there are long-term effects. So of course, one can become that themselves. One can end up being a narcissist or end up having antisocial personality disorder themselves. One can be, of course, you have the black sheep and the extreme empath that just wants to fix everything and rescue everybody, and they just become codependent and messed up themselves. So one has to go through their own healing, right? Because as an adult, one may feel like they're never enough, and so they overcompensate, they're over accountable. One may have PTSD, they may be hypersensitive, they may never know what to expect because they were always hyper with the mother, with the parent. They were always overly watching the parents' moves, watching the parents' mood, and trying to accommodate the parents so that they could stay out of harm's way. As an adult, one may feel like that they feel guilty for having needs, just everyday basic needs like food, shelter, clothing, and things of that sort. They might get a spouse that wants to give them a nice house and nice car, but they feel guilty for having those things because they've never been able to have anything and be able to appreciate without feeling guilty or without it being taken away from them. They may be overly compliant, right? Some children come out overly compliant as adults and as children. And what they're doing is they're doing something called fawning. When you fawn, there's fawn, fight, or flight, right? Fawn, fight, flight, or freeze, right? And so when one is fawning, it's like if they feel like someone's mad at them, they will kind of suck up to them and and try to get on their good side because they don't want anyone to be angry at them because they know what happens when someone is angry at them. So they become a fawner, where a people pleaser, always trying to keep people happy and walking on eggshells so that they don't do anything wrong. They may become the rebellious child, which is the fight or flight, where they are just rebellious about everything. They don't want anybody to control them, and so they become the one that's controlling. Like they have to control their life, and what they're doing is they're trying to protect themselves, right? And so they may become very controlling. What would someone do what would someone look like in regards to freezing? Freezing is when someone has been abused so much that if they're abused again as a teenager, adulthood, or later on in life, they do something called freezing, where they don't fight back. They don't fawn, they don't fight, they don't flight, they don't run. They just freeze and they don't fight back, and then the perpetrator is able to do whatever they want to do with them. And a lot of times you'll see this in SA cases where the perpetrator will say, well, they didn't fight back, they didn't move, they didn't say no. It's because they're in something called freeze state, right? They freeze. And this is a side effect of extreme child abuse, something that when you've been raised by a psychopathic or a malignant narcissistic mother, where you just freeze, because whenever she would come after you, if you ran, you got in more trouble, and fawning was not going to stop anything. And so you just kind of froze and just allowed her to do whatever it was that she was doing. Fawning is something that I had within my experience, and then also fight or flight. But fawning is quite sad because children will do it. They know that the adult is upset. They know the adult is mad, and so they will try to comfort the adult, and the whole time the child is actually very fearful. So this is a really sad case of child abuse and neglect from the malignant narcissistic mother. These people don't have the capacity to love anything. My malignant narcissistic mother my animals, I mentioned this in previous videos, where my animals were my safe space, where I could feel love, I could feel seen with my animals. And so I always had a stray dog or something that I would bring with me and try to keep it with me, right? She would do things like shoot the dog or just really cruel things. Like, I won't go into all the details of what would happen to the animals, but she would do cruel things to animals. And if it wasn't her doing cruel things to the animals, it was the men that she drug into the house that would do cruel things to animals in order to threaten abuse to her, right? So she brought the same energy around us that she was. So it was a very scary childhood where you were deprived of any type of feeling, emotion, being seen, being heard. You didn't see any of that, right? You didn't have any of that. So with all of that being said, and I hope that none of you are in this type of situation, or if you have been raised in this type of situation and now you don't know what type of parent you're going to be. You're terrified of being a parent, right? So I want to kind of give you some healing modalities on what you can do, right? And so you want to start your healing, right? Eventually you're going to have to learn how to cope, or you're going to become that in some way. And so you're going to have to learn how to cope. So healing modalities, right? First of all, you want to do the exact opposite of what your parents did, right? Because you don't know where to start. You don't have an example of what it is to be in parents. You don't know where to start. So, but you want to start. A good place to start is doing the exact opposite of what your parents did. Now, therapy is a great place to start, but most people don't just go straight to therapy. They try to fix it themselves. Maybe I'm speaking for myself, but if any of you out there are kind of like me, where you just want to you can fix it yourself, I'll do it myself, I'll heal myself type of energy, then this is for you. So you want to do the exact opposite, but you want to do the exact opposite with extreme balance. Because one of the ways that narcissism, so the book says, I think narcissism is a spirit, and I think that it's transferred through it's hereditary, right? Some get it, some don't, just like any other hereditary disorder or disease. But you want to do it with extreme balance, because according to the DSM-5, when narcissism is either caused by extreme protection and putting or extreme protection, putting the child up on the pedestal. Oh, you're perfect, nothing can ever touch you, or else just straight out neglect. So you want to do it with the balance, because when you try to do the exact opposite, then you go to the extreme of extreme protection and then putting the child on a pedestal, right? That telling the child how beautiful they are, how smart they are, because you've never heard that. Now, we need balance with this, right? Because we can create our own narcissist within our children. So as a wounded parent who's trying to raise children, you need balance with that. Yeah? So if you have a child that's beautiful, you want that child to know that they're beautiful. You remind them that pretty is as pretty does. Pretty on the outside is only as pretty on the inside. And so you try to have a balance with those children. In protecting your children, you don't want anybody to touch them. You don't want anybody to hurt them. In protecting your children, you provide them a safe space that they can come to you and they can tell you if someone else is hurting them in any way, form, or fashion. And so you can react instead of being so proactive that you don't let anyone come near to them at all, because you're trying to protect them. So you're kind of become a helicopter mom, where you just don't drink out of the water faucet, put these knee pads on, put this helmet on, put this life vest on, put this bulletproof vest on, and we're constantly trying to protect the child, because no one ever protects you. But in doing that, we inadvertently harm our children. And so we want a nice balance. So one way you can do this is just basically to speak to your child like your child is a human being, not like your child is a little person. And you speak to them, and there's all types of information out there you can get on how to properly use the proper words. But you want to speak to them and let them know that if anybody ever hurts you, let them know where the no-touch zones are and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and that they can come to you. And never, ever, ever, I plead with you to never, ever, ever blame the child and say that it's the child's fault. They'll never come to you again. It's always best to believe your child, even if your child, on the slight chance that your child is lying, it's best to believe your child, because in believing your child, you may lose an adult friend, or you may lose a relationship, or you may lose something like that. But in not believing your child, you lose your child. And when you don't believe your child, if it did happen, it's like happening twice. Only the second time is worse, because it's happening at the hands of you. So we need to heal so that we can parent right. But the first thing, if you've done no healing, is try to do the exact opposite of your parents, but do it with balance. Yeah? There's all types of information these days. You can study it, try to do it with balance on how to cope as a parent who has been abused by a malignant, narcissistic, psychopathic mother. And so you want to teach your child boundaries and allow them to have boundaries. Let their no stand for something. Do you want to eat this food? No. Are you full? Why aren't you finishing your plate? I'm full. Honor that. Don't say clean your plate, eat every bit of it. You know what I mean? Honor it. Take the plate, put it up, and then when they say they're hungry later, they can just see it again. But you don't have to sit there and force them to eat the food, because they start not trusting their own feelings. They start not trusting their own emotions, and they start not trusting their own boundaries. When they say they're full, they're basically setting a boundary. Mom, Dad, I'm full. Right? So we want to honor these things. And so in coping as an adult, doing the exact opposite, making sure that you have the balance so that you're not creating a child that has mental health issues themselves, right? We all make mistakes, and you're going to make mistakes, but try to do your best with the balance. Giving the child a safe space. Like, they have a room, they have a safe space, they have a safe corner, they have somewhere they can go to feel safe. That they're not always exposed to the whole entire house, that they have some place that they can retreat to feel safe. Giving the child permission to just basically be who they are as a human being. They're just a little human being. And so give them a space. Like, if they start having a temper tantrum or a fit or anything, you can say, honey, I think you need to go to your safe space and take some time out. And so therefore they retreat into it like it's a safe space and not necessarily so much as a punishment. Because the thing is that children have emotions. Yeah. Another thing is as we're going on to our healing journey, is acquiring some type of spiritual belief, something that's higher than you, that you can ask for guidance. Your ancestors, whether it be going to church, whether it be meditation, yoga, whatever it is, something that connects you to your body, and something that's higher than yourself that you can call on. Another one is recognizing triggers. When you've been triggered by something that has happened in your childhood, now you're seeing it in your adulthood. You might see it in your spouse, or you might see it in your friend or something, or you may even see it in your own children. Stopping and reminding yourself that this current situation that's happening right now in the present is not what happened in the past. Yeah. This is where shadow work and inner child work comes in as well. So when you have a trigger, that's your shadow or your inner child remembering what has happened to you. And so it'd be a good time to do some inner child work and shadow work, journaling and things of that sort. I'll drop a video about inner child work and shadow work down in the description box that you can view later. So basically, giving the child boundaries, allowing the child to speak their truth with respect, and giving the child a safe space to express themselves, right? Doing the exact opposite, but having balance with that, giving the child a safe space to express themselves. So if something does happen to them outside of the home, that they feel comfortable enough to come to you. Don't lose it, and comfort the child, let them know it wasn't their fault, and then you can take care of whatever you need to take care of as an adult. But keep the child safe in that. Your primary goal as a parent is to ensure that they have a safe space to express their fears, their emotions, and things of that sort. So basically, healing yourself is an everyday process. You don't have to just dive into it every day, all day, but it's a process. You see stuff come up and you deal with it at that time, right? Like I said, that's where inner child work and shadow work comes in. One of the things that I chose to work with on my healing journey was plant medicine. Now, plant medicine isn't for everyone, so I advise that you do all of your research in regards to that topic. But therapy. Going to therapy is a good safe space to go to. Okay. Now they're going to come with book terms and things of that sort, but it's a good safe space for you to go to on your healing journey. And you may even get your children into therapy. But self-healing is a deliberate act that has to be done on purpose. You don't just heal. Healing doesn't just happen. It goes in the corners, it goes in the crevices, it hides and it grows, which is what we refer to as the shadow. So seeing the triggers, working on them as you go, and just being the best parent you can without going to one extreme or the other is the best that you can do. Yeah. So it is a long journey, but you got this. You have what it takes, and it starts with just basically healing yourself. Holistic modalities, or you can use the therapeutic modalities. Um, therapeutic massage. You become, a lot of times children who have been through this, they become healers themselves of other people, right? What they're really doing is they're healing themselves. I hope that none of you are going through any of this or have gone through any of this. So this video is for those who have gone through it and who desire to heal themselves. This is all I have for you today on my channel, Closing the Gap. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like button, maybe drop a comment. If you're really feeling my vibe, don't forget to hit the bell notification so that you know the next time that I upload. We'll see you next time here on Closing the Gap. And I wish you the best on your healing journey. You got this. We got this. We'll see you next time.